everybody, this is Dan Miller from Bluegrass Unlimited magazine, and today we're going to continue with doing some chord stuff on the guitar. We did Sweet Georgia Brown a couple weeks ago, and then last week we did Festival Waltz. You learned some new chord shapes and some new chords. Today I'm going to sort of discuss the idea of Western swing style rhythm and how that lays out. Typically in Western swing, we're going to play a very distinct bass note and a bass line. The last two times we were playing a little bit less distinct of a bass note, just kind of a percussive slap, but this time we're going to actually let that bass note ring a little bit clearer and then play a bass line along with a chord, and we're going to move that chord with every note of the bass line. We're going to move to a new chord, okay? Now this kind of style of playing backup, some people call it Texas backup or sock rhythm, something like that. Eldon Shamblin, who was the guitar player for Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, my buddy Dix Bruce did an interview with Eldon years ago, and he gave me, he recorded it and gave me a copy of that recording. And I was listening to that, and Eldon said that the reason he came up with this strong moving bass line in his rhythm was because Bob Wills had hired a guy because he was a great singer, but he wasn't an instrumentalist. He didn't really play an instrument, but Bob put him on the bass, taught him some basic things on the bass, and put him on the bass, hired him as a singer, but put him on the bass. And Eldon said the guy didn't really know how to play bass lines, and so he had to do that on his guitar along with the chordal harmony in order to take up the slack for this guy not knowing how to do it on the bass. So that's the story I got, and that was in an interview from Eldon Shamblin himself. So anyway, a little bit of tidbit of history there for you. So the way these things come together, I'm going to use the tune Sally Goodin, and I'm just going to play it in G. You can play it in any key because these chords we're going to use are movable. So it's easy to go to A. I think most fiddle players probably play the song in A, but I'm just gonna lay it all out for you in the key of G here. So the idea is to create a bass line or come up with a bass line and then form the chords that go along with the notes of that bass line. And the rule of thumb is that if the note is in the scale of the key, for instance, we're in the G scale now, if that note is in the G scale, you can play a chord that uses that, either a major or minor chord, major 7, minor 7, some kind of chord that uses that note as the root. If you go to a note that's outside of the scale of the key, typically you're going to put a diminished chord in that spot, because that's telling the listener's ear that this thing is moving and it's on a note that's not really in the universe of the scale of the key. Just a rough rule of thumb there. So the bass line today, I'm going to do one example, and maybe next week do a different example. But today the example I'm going to do is a bass line that goes like this. Okay, so that's my bass line. And there's lots of different bass lines you can come up with here. I did a book years ago that's called, I did this with my buddy Tim May, called Flat Picking Essentials Volume 7, Advanced Rhythm and Chord Studies. And all of the different chords that I've been laying out in this series on increasing your chord vocabulary can be found in that book. And then examples of swing jazz, examples of Western swing. I think I did Sally Goodin in here and did maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 different passes creating different bass lines or different chord choices based on those bass lines each time through. And again, we'll talk about some of those substitutions that you can use either this week or next week. Maybe I'll just lay out a basic rhythmic thing this week, and then next week talk about some substitutions that you could use using the same bass line and then do a different bass line. Okay? So let's go through it. And again, there's tab or chord charts at the bluegrassunlimited.com website. If you're viewing this on YouTube, go to bluegrassunlimited.com, go to our lessons page, and you can find a PDF of the chart. So I'm not going to really go into a lot of explanation about where my fingers are, because you just look at the chart and do that. Okay? So I'm going to start on a G chord and play a G6. We talked about the G6 last week. Then when I go to the B note, okay, I'm going to play a B minor 7 flat 5 chord. Okay? And again, look at the chart if you don't know what that is. Interestingly enough, this shape is also a G9 chord without a bass note, or without a 1. It's a G9 chord without the G note. And if we move this finger from the B and keep the rest of the fingers where they are, but just reshape it like this, so I got an F note, an A note, a D note, and a G note on those 4 strings. That's still that G9 if we're using the G as the root. That's a cool chord that Tony Rice used to use, moving from just a regular G chord to a C chord. So if I did that, I'd go right on my G chord. And again, so if you took this G chord with playing the D note and G note here, and the B note here and the G note here, right? Move these 2 fingers over 1 string and then 2 strings, and that's the chord. Anyway, cool tidbit. Kind of a cool thing Tony Rice did with that G9 chord. Anyway, let's go back to the Western swing thing. We're at our B, right? When we go to the C note, I'm just going to play C major. Like this bar chord shape, the A to the B to the C, moving up there. I'm going to flatten that, play that C major. I can also play this regular C chord if I muted those strings as I hit them. But I'll just play a C major chord right there. When I go to C sharp, I'm going to go to C sharp diminished. And just look at that shape on the chord chart. So it's G6, B minor 7 flat 5, C, C sharp diminished, like that. The next thing I'm going to do is go to this G chord right here. Believe it or not, that's just a G major chord. I've got a B note, a D note, and a B note, and a G note, and a D note, which is G major. Again, look at the chart. So that is going to go from a B to a B flat, right? I'm going to do B flat diminished there, and then a B flat again. It's not in the scale, so you can play that diminished. And then I'm going to go to an A minor 7, and then D, D7. So that's it. That's the line on the first part. Okay, so now the next time through, I'm going to play, I've done this bass line. So I went G note, B note, C sharp. Then I went to B, B flat, A, D. Okay? And with the G note, I played G6. With the B note, I played B minor 7 flat 5, which is also called a half diminished chord, but same thing. And then I went to a C chord, C sharp diminished, and then I went to a G chord, B flat diminished, A minor 7, D7. Okay? Second time through, I'm going to just play the first part exactly the same. That C sharp diminished, I'm going to just do my D7. Stay the D7, but I'm going to go D, A, and then I'm going to do a bass walk, G, E, F sharp, G. So now for that second part, it's going to look like this. Back to that G6. So that's the whole thing. This time you can just do that over and over and over again. Next time I'll maybe do a little bit of a variation and show how with this same kind of how you might mix it in differently with, or how you might select to play a different chord shape with that chord. We'll just do some variation next time, and maybe a different bass line or two. So practice that. I think the only new chord shape was this minor 7 flat 5, because we had this sixth shape last time. This is new, minor 7 flat 5. Of course, this is just your regular major chord. I can't remember if we did this diminished shape before, but again, look at the chord chart. Right, and then this is new, which is a G major chord. Major chord is 3 notes. A G major chord has a G, B, and a D. I have my B here. I'm muting the A string. I have a G note there, and I have my D note there. So that's just a G major chord, different shape. Then I'm going to move these two fingers back and flatten that for my B flat diminished. Okay, we had that diminished shape before. Then my A minor 7, we had that shape before, and of course my D7, we had that shape before. So just a couple new chord shapes this time, but again, you want to pop that bass line walking, and when you're doing this style of rhythm. And you can do this with a lot of different fiddle tunes. Fiddle players sometimes like this kind of style of rhythm, playing behind that. We have a fiddle player in our band that was in the Missouri State contest, and you know, a lot of fiddle players have more than one guitar player backing them up. And I played these kind of sock chord rhythm things behind him. The other guitar player just played regular kind of bluegrass style open chords, and it worked fine together. Gave him a little bit of different texture in the rhythm. She was on one side, I was on the other side, so it gave him this wall of stereo kind of rhythm around him, so it works pretty good. Anyway, that's all for this time. Enjoy playing sock rhythm or Texas style rhythm to Sally Goodin, and we'll see you next time. This is Dan Miller for Bluegrass Unlimited magazine. Thanks.